know except what God does. So, we look at the book of John. We have this very interesting account, and we'll just read the first 4 verses and start to talk about it. That Jesus is, of course, in the middle of his ministry, and he's having quite the success. And we read in John chapter 4, when therefore, verse 1, the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard about Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John. Did John have quite a success himself?
Yes.
Yeah, masses were coming. So much so the Pharisee had to investigate, who is this guy? Now, the new problem is not John, it's Jesus. So although Jesus himself was not baptizing, his disciples were. What do you think that was? Why was Jesus physically not baptizing someone? Well, could be way. You have to be baptized by Jesus. There's probably another reason. Paul alluded to it, the same thing. He didn't baptize many people. Huh?
Paul said he didn't baptize except Christopher from Gale.
And he said why? Lest people say what?
I'm of a Paul.
Yeah. Can you imagine you say, well, I got baptized. Yeah, I was baptized by Jesus. Would that be used as a calling card? I'm more special than you.
Sure.
Well, Paul was worried about it himself. And who's Paul compared to Jesus? Nothing, And so Jesus probably baptized no one. There's no record of him ever baptizing anyone. Verse 3. So he left Judea and he departed again to Galilee. And that's going to be north. We'll show that on a map. And he had to pass through Samaria. And he came to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the parcel of the ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey. That's interesting. Does Jesus physically get tired and wore out?
Yes.
Wow, as you get older, you can relate more and more to that, all right? He was sitting thus by the well, and it was about the 6th hour, and that would be what?
Noon.
All right, noon o'clock, okay? So when we look at all this, we're just going to introduce the subject here. Jesus traveled with his disciples, and the disciples are largely from Galilee themselves. They were fishermen, right? So he's going back up to that place. And this phrase, he had to go through Samaria, some people try to make a big deal about that. He had to, like he was compelled, it was predestined because he was going to meet this woman at the well. Well, we'll look at that and try to understand it when it says he had to. Here's the map. So Judea is down here where Jerusalem is on the bottom part of that map. That's called Judea area. And you have that blue squiggly line is the Jordan River. Then you have the area that's more purple, or what is that color? It's not pink. I would not put pink up there. Lavender, thank you. That's it's a different way of saying pink. And then there's Galilee. What is Samaria? We'll have to talk about that in a second, okay? Here is a map of the different roads in New Testament times. These red ones, this is the King's Highway. This is the Via Maris. It's along the coast. They are the major roads, like I-5, right? And all these yellow ones were minor roads going through it. So here we have Samaria. And I think I have on the map, here's Sychar. I'm going to call it Sychar from now on. And he's to the only road that he would be right through here to get up to Sychar, right? And if he didn't go through this road, he'd have to go all the way to the King's Highway or all the way to the coast. So if you're going to Seattle, where do you have to go through? On the way, Portland. So I had to go through Portland. People might say it that way. Now, do you have to go through Portland? No, but it's the quickest route. And when there's been a big accident, I've gone over the mountain and up 95 through, the Bend Road, all the way up through the Deschutes River, across the Columbia and up on because we wanted a road trip. But basically, if you're going to Seattle, you got to go through Portland. Yeah. Yes. He's going through it because it's the most convenient way. That's all I want you to see, all right? So what is this idea about Samaria anyway? And why is it that this different section between Judea and Galilee? Well, in the early history of the nation of Israel, they were divided, remember? And there were the 10 northern tribes and the 2 southern tribes, which was Judah and Benjamin. The northern tribes, they took the name Israel, and they were like the southern tribes involved in idolatry, but even to a worse extent. As Mariana was talking about this morning, it got so bad that God sent his prophets Isaiah and other Jeremiah saying, God's judgment's coming. I'm going to bring the Syrians, and they're going to take you into captivity because of your idolatry. But the prophets would be preaching peace, peace, everything's peace. Then Assyria came in 720 and totally deported most all of the people of the 10 northern tribes, left the sick and the poor and just some minor people, a remnant. Then as what they do, often they would import their own people to occupy the land and the cities and take over. And so they were imported, and what would they do? They would intermarry with the remaining Jews. And so half-breed's not a good word, but that's what they were considered. Half-breeds, half Jew and half Gentile. And of course, Gentiles were despised by Jews because they're not in the covenant with God. And you have now intermarried with, and so they were despised by the Jews of the south. And likewise, the Samaritans despised the Jews as well. In fact, they established their own place of worship, and we'll show the mountains that they worship on. And even to this day, there's a religion called Samaritism, and they believe they're the faithful remnant of Judaism. They're the only faithful Jews around. That's how far they've digressed, all right? And rather than Jerusalem, they think the mount where they are at is the place that they're supposed to be worshiping. Now, the woman that Jesus is going to meet say, why are you talking to me? Because Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. She recognizes that. That's how strong this rift was. And some of the Pharisees, when they're traveling north, they wouldn't go through Samaria because they didn't want to become unclean. They would go all the way around. But the normal Jew like Jesus, they're going to take the quickest route. So he had to go to Samaria. Now, have you ever gone on a trip, you had to go through a place you didn't want to go? And sometimes if you're going in Eastern Oregon, there's some desert land, but you just got to go through it. I think it's beautiful, all of it, but have you ever gone through Death Valley? I mean, you didn't want to go through there when it was 110. But that's the way to go unless you go all the way around. Can you imagine their attitude? Don't want to go to Samaria because those Samaritans live there, but we had to go through Samaria. That's all it means. It wasn't some divine appointment like some people would have the Bible say. But I want to impress upon you, we all have our own Samaria. Places we have to go through, journeys and paths God's going to take us on that we don't necessarily want to go to, but we're trying to get to the other side. And what matters is what we encounter and how we behave on the way through our own Samaria. That's where we're going to make the biggest difference for the Lord. Because as we saw in John chapter 1, when God finds us, we go out and find others. That's what they did. Found people, find others. And that's what we're going to see here again. It's really quite exciting what happens. So here is a picture of that land as it looks today. And Sychar would be there. Shechem is a very important city, and it's a larger place. It's current Nablus. Had the privilege of being there once. It's under Palestinian control, so it's hard to get there now. But on the left, you have Mount Gerizim, and on the right, Mount Ebal. Who knows what those mountains are about? They're real famous in Jewish history. Mary knows. I knew you would. What? The law was read there, and Moses had them camp on both mountains, and he pronounced the blessings of the law and Deuteronomy and the curse. If you obey the law, blessings, but if you break the law, curses, and you'll be taken into captivity. This is a very important area. And also we find that Jacob's well was there. Isn't that what it says? Jacob's well. And there, anytime there's a amazing historical site, Some denomination, in this case the Greek Orthodox Church, will build a cathedral over it. And so there's been many church buildings in the past. They've all been destroyed. This is the current one. And you go inside and there's the well. See at the bottom? And you can actually draw water out of it. But the water's kind of contaminated because of all the pollution above, surface water getting down into it. But it's interesting. When did Jacob live? When did Jacob live? Time of Christ? We're talking about back in the book of Genesis, right? 1,500 years ago. And when he came back from finding, when he had to run for his life and he meets Esau and they make up, he buys this parcel of land. And it doesn't say that in Genesis, but we know now that he dug a well. And that was not any easy thing to do. And this well has been there ever since, all up to the time of Jesus. Isn't that amazing? And that's where Jesus rests. Because what? Why does he rest there and stop? He's tired. It's rocky trip. It's through kind of deserted land, hot, arid land. And it's about 30 miles by, foot. That'd be maybe 3 days if you really hoofed it, 2.5. But he's tired. It says in the Bible, he's wearied. That means wore out. And he's sitting at the well. You see the picture? Yes. That's the well, but it was in a field or somewhere before. Now it's got a cathedral over it. All right, good. I'm glad you clarified that. So we're now in verse 7. Yeah, Stan. Right.
A half-hour drive, 30 miles, like you said.
Yes.
3 days, and they're sleeping on the dirt.
Yes, good point. And they didn't have donkeys or to pull the cart to even walk on. They walked. They walked. And if you ever, when you're checking Google Maps and it's like to Portland and you go 5 hours, oh, it's on the walk mode, right? And I do that every now and then. Like, how long would it take to walk there? And sometimes it's 17 hours, 36 hours. And I do that because that's what they had to do. We get there in 5 hours in the car. It'd take 3 days otherwise, right? So I'm glad you brought that out. There came a woman of Samaria to draw water. What time is it?
It's 6 p.m.
It's noon.
Or noon. Yeah.
6 hour a day. If the day starts at 6 in the morning, the 6 hour would be noon. Most people come early in the morning. They come late at night. Even when we've been in Africa, people gather at the well to get water because they don't have water, domestic water everywhere. And it's a gathering place. It's really quite neat. But they come in the morning for their morning water, and they come in the evening to get water for bathing or drinking for the evening meal. Why is she coming at noon? It's kind of odd.
Well, so nobody will see her.
Why?
Because of her past
All right, this lady has a reputation, doesn't she? And we'll talk about this lady in a second, all right? She has a reputation, and that'll come out in this discussion. So she's probably coming out in the middle of the day so she won't be seen by others. And of all people, she's surprised to see a Jew there. It's Jesus. Now, where did his disciples go?
Get food.
Okay, we'll read that right here. So Jesus, when he sees her, he says, give me a drink. I don't think it's an order, it's just a request. Can you give me a drink? But give me a drink. For his disciples gone away into the city to buy food. So he initiates the conversation. Now that's astounding for a couple reasons. One, she's a woman. Second of all, she's a Samaritan, right? And we know that because she's going to be amazed by it. But I just point that out is that when you go to your own Samaria, sometimes God asks you to do things that are awkward. And I like what Clinton says, we got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. One of Clinton's little isms that he gives us. And they're actually, it's true. Now, we know this is awkward because even when the disciples come back, they're shocked that Jesus is talking to a woman. And as we go through there, we're going to end at the lesson asking, where's your Samaria? Where might you meet people where found people can find others? That God puts you in them in your path so you could talk to them. But who initiates the conversation? Jesus says. That means we do too. As disciples, we go where Jesus goes, and he's going to take us where he takes us, where he's been. And sometimes it's going to be awkward, but that's how it happens, okay? And so the woman is surprised. She goes, she said, how is it you being a Jew? Was that obvious by their dress or something, right? Okay. Are asking me a drink since I'm a Samaritan woman. It's not just a woman, but a Samaritan woman. Then we have this tag here, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Now, when it says no, what does that mean? None. Some, again, like the Pharisees that were, the self-righteous, they would go around the country so they didn't even have to become unclean by coming in contact with one. So this racial divide was strong. So she's just as shocked as his disciples will be, as we're seeing in just a second. Like, what are you doing talking to me? And all he did was ask what? And why did he want water?
He's thirsty, he's weary.
He's weary. I just want you to remember the context. Is there anything natural about this? Or unnatural? Or forced?
It's natural.
It's just what you do when you're out and about. But who you initiate a conversation with is what sometimes is awkward. That's what's unnatural to us. But this is not a rehearsed speech where Jesus has a planned thing. Okay, I got 1 minute to share the gospel with him, so as soon as she sits down, I'm going to give her my spiel. And it's rehearsed, and I hope I got everything in it, and it's eloquent. And so I can bring him to the Lord. Is that what he does? No, what does he do? Give me some water. Why? Because he's thirsty. What's amazing about it is who he's asking. Now, do we encounter people like that we might feel awkward around? And I don't know if I want to talk to them. I don't know if they'd ever become a Christian and we qualify them or disqualify them. All right? So, as we go on, Jesus comes back and feeds her curiosity. Now, it's interesting what he doesn't say compared to what he does say. He didn't say God so loved the world that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. He just says, no. Woman, if you knew the gift of God, what God can really give you, and if you really knew who was talking to you and said, give me a drink, you would have asked him for a drink. And he would have given you what? Jesus turns the attention on himself. One, if you really knew who I was and what I could offer you, you would be asking me, and I'd give you living water. Now, let's just set the scene. She's thinking H2O, water. Right. Is Jesus talking about H2O when he talks about living water? No, he's talking about the Word of God and the gift of eternal life that he's willing to offer anyone that asks, right? But just keep in your mind, she's thinking H2O first. Has he told her a lot? No. Has he explained it? But has he sparked her curiosity?
Yes.
So Jesus, remember, said he's come to seek and to save lost. And here is a lost person in the minds of the other people in town to the nth degree. But everyone's lost, and you can't be more lost than another. When you're dead, you're all just what? Dead. You can't be more dead spiritually than someone else. And so Jesus is seeking someone. And found people are going to turn around and find others. And we'll see that's what happens right here. So, she comes back and said, sir, you've got nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. So I looked in the research. Originally, it was about 128 feet deep. But like stupid tourists do, they drop stones in. I wonder how long it hits before it splashes. And it's filled up, and it's only like 78 feet deep now. But 128 feet, that's, how do you make a well by hand that deep down? Yeah, without it caving in. And to last all that time. And to crawl back out. But now they would drop something down on a rope and draw it out. So she's puzzled because she's thinking H2O, like, sir, how are you going to get water? Are you great? You're not greater than our father Jacob. That's interesting. They knew Jacob dug that well. Does that give historicity to legitimacy to the Old Testament?
Absolutely.
Isn't that amazing? I just think I love these little comments, and we can find where it is now, but it just shows this is real. This is their life. Just like I visited Hiroshima, I know what happened there when the nuclear bomb dropped, and it was sobering. This is a place that was an icon of their history. Jacob's well, and it's been giving them water for hundreds of years, for the livestock, to keep them alive themselves physically. They all been coming to this well. And Jesus said, if you knew who I was, I'm going to give you living water. You're never going to thirst again. Does that entice her, interest her? He said, are you greater than our father Jacob? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. And who gave us well and drank of it, and his sons and his cattle? It's interesting. Sometimes when we're trying to share the gospel with others, we mistakenly, but not intentionally, often we're not aware what we're doing. We're turning our attention to the wrong things of the person we're talking to. Maybe the right church. Is there an important discussion about the right church? Jesus said there's one body, one Lord, one church, right? One faith. Sometimes we talk about instrumental music, and that's important, but how about baptism? Is that important? Absolutely. But we ought to turn our attention to the only person that can save, and that's Jesus. And that's what Jesus says. He turns attention on himself. If you knew who was talking to you, you'd be asking me for water. And she goes, are you greater than Jacob? Yeah, I am. Now, does she know that yet?
No, she will admit it.
Now, here's another problem we make when we're trying to find people. We dump truckload on them. Here's all the information we have about all the scripture in the Bible, the right way to worship, the 5 acts of salvation in our dump truck, and we just go, and they're overwhelmed. It's too much, isn't it? It's like a fire hose, right? And all Jesus does is talk about himself in living water. And I want to suggest to you, that's all we have to talk about is about Jesus to start with. Why did he come? How do we know he really lived? His resurrection, like the song you sang, this great love, how deep the Father's love. And then the rest will follow. Why did he come? Is he the Son of God? And why did he die? And he died for you because he wants to save you and give you living water. It's really that simple, okay? So the woman, let me go, we have to read here because I didn't put all the verses up. So we're in verse 12. Actually, verse 13. She asks the question in verse 12. Jesus' answer said to her, everyone who drinks of this water shall thirst again. H2O, correct? But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall become in him the well of water springing up to, isn't that beautiful? A well of water springing up to eternal life. And that's when the woman said, give me, Lord, sir, give me this water so I will not be thirsty nor come all the way here to draw. What is she still thinking?
She's still thinking physical water.
H2O, right? Yes.
I kind of can't hear this lesson without thinking of if anybody's ever been to St. Augustine and the Fountain of Youth.
Yeah.
And all that.
Yeah.
It's just sulfur tasting water, and I drank it let's see, it's been probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm still Asian. So.
Yeah. But the idea is she didn't have to take this trip, and bring it all back. It's laborious, to all these pots or clay and for animals and livestock and family. Give me this. You know what everyone needs and they don't know what they need? And it's living waters. You've heard me talk about it before, and I'm not the first one. There's that empty hole in all our lives, and only God can fill it. But we try to fill it with other stuff, accomplishments, wealth or pride, and it just makes us more empty. The only thing that can fill our longing is this spiritual water that comes from God. I'll just read a couple of passages. Jesus himself said in John we're going to read in a second. My food is to do the will of him who sent me. In chapter 6 and verse 27, do not work for the food which perishes, but food which endures to eternal life. Because the Son of Man will give to you, for on him the Father set his seal. Of course, I'll just read it since we're talking about it. In verse 38 of the same chapter, I've come down from heaven not to do my will, but the will of him who sent me. Verse 55, my flesh is real food and my blood is real drink. Of course, the psalmist says, I delight to do thy will, O God, the law is within my heart. Jesus is fulfilling God's will to seek and to save the lost. And the way he's going to do that is by giving free the living water. So she says, give me this water. And so Jesus patiently, does he rebuke her? Like, no, woman, you don't get it. I'm not talking about water. I'm talking about, he says, what does he do? He says, just go get your husband. Bring him back. Now, does Jesus know what she's going to say? Yes. Now, there's where he has something on us, okay? He knows that as she comes back and says, I have no husband. He knows that. Because he comes back and says, you've correctly said you have no husband. Maybe this was a test to see if she's going to lie or not. I don't know. For you have had 5 husbands. Now, what does that tell you about this woman in society and the way people viewed her? Yeah. There was a time in our life, in our generation, my parents, and divorce was unheard of, and remarriage. You were just looked upon. Imagine 5 husbands? Huh? Yeah. Not a good reputation. And now, on top of it, Jesus says, the man you're living with is not your husband. So she's living in sin, immorality. Openly, and everyone knows that. Maybe because she's just given up on herself, like, no one's going to accept me in society anymore because I've been divorced 5 times, and marriage doesn't work. That's what we hear people today. I might as well just live with a guy and save me the problem of the divorce. Is that a lot of youth today, people today? Yeah. And people that have been married and divorced, now they're living together. Yeah. They don't know it, but they have a hunger for the living water. And sometimes we might look upon them, it's like, I don't want to talk to them. Look at how what a mess their life is. And they're not qualified. I want to find someone that has a decent life. No, Jesus came to seek and save who? This woman is lost. And remember we talked about, you got to meet people where they are, not where I want them to be. Because sometimes they're not where I want them to be, so it is awkward to be around them. I'll just tell you a story. I was at the public market downtown, the open air one. We like to go there every Saturday because it's a dog show, it's a people show, and they have nice, vegetables, and now they have plants and starts. But there was a guy often, people getting signatures, for some latest position to get on the ballot. And the guy had pink hair and a dress to his bottom. And he says in a manly voice, you want to sign this petition to get more taxes out of the richest corporations in America? And I wanted to be smart. And I wanted to say, dude, because he's identifying as well. But I said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And just walked on by. But it just turned my stomach. And I think of this. Because maybe that was my Samaritan moment. Maybe he would never listen. We have Samaritan man. I said Samaritan moment, I said, not woman, but thank you. But you understand what I'm trying to say? It's so easy to write people off because it does disgust us. This woman was disgusting probably to everyone in her city community. But Jesus loved her. Met her where she was at. Yes.
I always like math. She had 5 husbands, and now she's living with one. That makes 6.
That's good math. Good job.
And now she's just meeting another man, which is 7.
Oh, yeah.
Makes it a perfect number.
Well, why? You might be making too much of it, but yeah, I'll go with that. Yes, Dan.
If you look back, how many rich and successful people did Jesus
That's right.
That's who God chose.
That's right. Exactly. Remember the parable of the wedding feast? The people that invited didn't come. He went out, got the poor and the wretched on the streets, right? Brought them in. Yeah.
I think of the lesson in another view as well as when Jesus said they needs go this way through Samaria. You can imagine his apostles there, they did not want to go this way.
Right.
I would love to hear the things that they had to say to Jesus. Why are you going this
Yeah.
way?
And we're going to get a clue of them in just a second. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
And so this was
Yeah.
this was
A
dealing with
learning
their
experience.
biases.
Yeah.
This was a teaching moment.
Yeah.
And Jesus is going to use it full swing.
Yeah. And I like that because when the disciples respond, they're echoing our sentiments. Like,
Exactly.
Jesus, what are you doing this? Because they feel awkward just like we would have felt awkward. Okay. Thank you. So the man you're living with is not your husband, you said truly. And the woman said, I think you're a prophet. Because what has he just done?
Told her life.
Read her life, her heart, everything. Yes, Lewis. Oh, Mary. Yes. Good point. It is beautiful. Yeah. And I wish I had that ability to make our evangelism a little easier. We could read people's hearts and tell them about things. But we can tell them about Jesus who does read hearts and know your heart and know your life. Now, does he judge her in this?
No.
Does he condemn her? Oh,
No.
I'm not going to talk to you anymore. He still wants her to go get her husband or the person she's living with. So she changes the subject real quick and has a question like, if you're a prophet of God, your people say you're supposed to worship in Jerusalem. Our people say we're supposed to worship on this mountain, Mount Gerizim, the one I showed you. What is it? And Jesus said, you don't get it. God is a spirit, and he's not worship in physical places, but if you're going to worship him, you got to worship him in spirit and in truth. And God is seeking true worshipers that will worship him from their heart. It's not about a place. And so she's so excited. We'll see what happens. Someone had their hand up. Oh, Jeremiah, was you? Oh, yeah, okay. So let's go what happens. So, meanwhile, who shows up? The 12. Because they've been going out for food. I don't know how far they had to travel, all the way in town and back. Yeah. And at this point, the disciples came, and they are amazed. What does that tell you about the Jewish-Samaritan conflict? It tells us all we need to know. Like, he's talking to a Samaritan woman. Yet no one was going to say. They didn't dare ask him. I think they've learned by now, you don't question Jesus, all right? What do you seek and why do you speak with her? And I don't know what's inferred in the first part. What do you seek? Are you trying to get something from her? Maybe they're not thinking on a high plane because she is. I don't know what they're thinking, but they don't dare ask it. But I don't think they're thinking good thoughts. Like, what is Jesus talking to a Samaritan woman? Because they wouldn't do it. That shows you how awkward this moment is. So when we encounter them the same way, we can have way. So they have some food they found, and they said, Rabbi, eat. And that's where Jesus responds, and we can read it. But I'm going to skip this part right here. Notice in verse 32, excuse me. He said to them, I have food to eat that you don't know about. Does that shock them? Like, what? Did someone get here before us? And the disciples therefore were saying to one another, no one brought him anything to eat, did he? And that's where he said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. He says, don't you not say there are 4 months, then comes the harvest? They plant the seed in the spring, and in 4 months they harvest. Bold I say to you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields. They're white for harvest. There's people all over. Who's he referring to? Lost people. And who's he referring to specifically? This woman. The fields are white for harvest. When we look around and walk and go to the store or walk through the market, do we see the fields are white for? They are. They're everywhere. They just don't know it. Already he who reaps is receiving wages, gathering fruit for life eternal, and he who sows and he who reaps will rejoice together. For another case, the saying is one true, that one sows, another reaps, because I send you to reap that which you have not labored. In other words, they're just doing the reaping, but all the seeds have been planted way before this. So what does the woman do? Go back to verse 28, because I skipped it. When the disciples come up and see this, they're amazed. Verse 28, we see the woman left her water pot and went into the city and said to the men, she talks to them. What is significant about this verse here? I highlighted for you. Why is it significant? Well, right here. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip it? Oh, maybe I didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had it up there. I'm referring to the one where it says she left her water pot and went into the city. What's significant about that?
Well, she left because she's so excited.
Why she was out there.
Why did she come in the first place? To get water. The only thing she's there for is to get water, and she leaves her water.
With the living water.
Something has replaced her desire for water. An excitement and a passion. That's what I want you to see. She's so excited that she leaves, forgets the very reason she came for in the first place. Now, not all hearts will respond that way, but some will, like this woman does. And then she goes back, and that's where we are now in verse 39. And so we'll pick up our reading there. And she tells everyone about what she's heard. And so that's in, well, actually, let's go back to verse 29. I'm sorry. She goes to the men and she says, come see a man who told me all the things I've done. This is not the Christ, is it? That'll tell you the Samaritans were looking for the Christ too, the Messiah. So they went out of the city and were coming to Jesus, right? Did Jesus find her? She didn't know. She thought she found the Messiah, but Jesus found her, and now what is she doing? Found people, go out and find others. So now they're coming back. Now that takes us to verse 39. From that city, many of the Samaritans believed in him because of the word of Jesus. No, what does it say?
The word of the woman.
Now, isn't that amazing? Have they listened to Jesus themselves? No. Whose testimony did they listen to?
This terrible woman that they never had any respect for.
Of all people they would become believers from, it's a testimony of this immoral person. So who could do this? Anyone. Do you have a story you can tell how Jesus changed your life? And how you met him on your Samaritan path and you were going this way, he was going that way, and he turned you around and saved your life, gave you living waters? And if we do, that's all it takes to start this discussion. It's not this dump truck load of information. It's just my story, what Jesus did for me, how I found Jesus. And they become believers just on her testimony. But it's not done. Or we're not done, right? So verse 40. So when the Samaritans came to him, they're asking him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. Isn't that something? In a Samaritan community. It was unheard of, unclean. And many more believed because of his word. Not the woman's word, now it's his word. And they were saying now to the woman, it's no longer because of what you said we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know, they don't think, they don't hope, they know this one is indeed the Savior of the world. So we can attract people to Jesus by our word, but eventually we have to bring them to Jesus, and they need to hear his word. So their faith is not based on what we have shared, but what Jesus says. Because faith cometh by hearing, and hearing the word of God. We got to turn them to Jesus and get them in the Bible and his stories, his word, somewhere, somehow. That's the process. And I love this. No longer because of what you said, but we have heard it for ourselves. And I love it. We know. People think faith is blind. No, they say what? We know. It's a conviction. Found people find people. And it's really just that simple. So let's look at ourselves and we'll be done. First of all, let me just go ahead.
I was going to say, verse 25 and 26, where she realizes that Jesus. I think that, can you imagine the look on her face?
Yeah.
When she had when she
Yeah.
realized that?
She's convinced he's the Christ, but he looks like one of us. But yeah, her excitement, that's what attracts people. So where could our Samaritan place be, our well? Give me some examples in modern day terms. What could it be that we encounter people? Work. Do we see a lot of the same people constantly? And it's awkward to breach the subject and we're afraid to do it. And we're worried about getting fired for it too. All right. Yes. I'll get to you. Huh?
Every place is a well.
Every place. Grocery store.
Well, and even out in your yard, working in your yard, and somebody comes walking down the street, there's your Samaritan moment.
There. Yes.
So do you think this is providence of God? How, you know how sometimes we believe that God has put us in a situation?
Yeah.
And I almost look at this as providence of God.
Okay. Good question.
You gotta realize,
So you hear what Doug asked? Is this providence? Did God set this arrangement up? That's why I started with he had to go to Samaria. Some people will say this is providential. God has a divine appointment with her. And that's why I said, no, there's no indication other than that's the easiest route. With that being said, we're praying God open up doors to us to good and honest hearts. And if we encounter people along our journey and they have a good, honest heart, and it's at a well or at a grocery store, at work, or at the dog park, or it's a slide when your kid is sliding with or swinging with their kid and you're talking with the other mother, has God maybe answered your prayer to send someone in your life?
Yes.
And that's your moment to say, have you heard about Jesus? So in that sense, yes. Every opportunity could be a divine moment. We don't know, but we have to treat it like they all are. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say? And it doesn't have to be somewhere special. It could be the most obscure places. Like I say, taking the trash out, like you said. You talk to someone. Yes.
It's obviously just, it's so hard sometimes. I think that's why it's such a good thing with those cards. Because you can, without
Yes.
trying to cross barriers,
Hand them a card.
being offensive, just, I wanted to hand you this. And the message is there. You're giving them an invite to where you have service. But I think so many times it's so easy for us, like just in passing, where you're like, oh, I really should say something, but it's only a 5-second encounter. It would be awkward, la 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 la. You make excuses.
Right, right.
So that's where I think the cards are good because then you can just, hey, I wanted you to have this, and then it's
You're welcome.
It's kind of inquisitive. It's like, oh, what is this? And then
Right.
it's like, oh, it's an invitation for my salvation, and then you don't have to be intrusive or invasive.
Good.
Or hey, let me talk to you, because some people are just like, leave me alone.
That's an icebreaker, and the card's like, be my guest card, remember? And we're going to print those so they're better. But yes, thank you for saying that. Jesus said, give me some water. Less than 5 seconds, right? That's all it takes. Good. Yes.
I had a lunch moment today before I got here. I had to rush. And I was over at McDonald's, and there's this old couple there. Husband and wife, probably in their closer 80s or something like that. And the guy kept looking at me, and he says, man, you seem real hungry. I said, I just finished preaching. He said, what? I said, I just finished preaching, and I'm hungry, yes. He goes, we need more people like that here. He said, where do you preach? And I told him, I said, you're welcome to come out anytime. We're out here on Kings Valley Highway. He said, wow, thank you.
Nice.
And so they were really nice after that, too, but you don't know when that moment's
You
coming.
don't know.
You can turn any conversation into a conversation about the Lord.
That's right.
Any conversation.
And the lady that came sat with you, what's her name?
Wyoming?
Wyoming.
Yes.
Because he was a little more aggressive. You went door to door inviting people. But What was your spiel? Was it a long sales pitch?
I just told her that we just recently remodeled a new church and we're wanting the neighborhood to grow and it's the nearest church that you can go to and I'd love to have you come.
That's it. And she came. She's been here twice in a row. Isn't that wonderful?
Amen.
And we're not going to call that Widow's Row because, but it's becoming Widow's Row. That's okay, isn't it? Willie.
Another wide open field is the street people in the street. If someone, I mean, sometimes when I stop and give them something, like if they start to cry, I'll say, I pray for you, what do you need? I need everything, but
Yes.
if I ask them if they know Jesus, it really opens up.
Yes.
You know, either they've been terribly hurt and they
Nice.
God, or anyway, it's
Yes.
huge.
Nice. I like that.
Me and Clinton have breakfast often, and we were at a restaurant and we were talking gospel, and someone overheard us and bought us for breakfast. That was one time. Second time, it happened again, but the man came by and Clinton can verify, says, we need more people like you in this neighborhood, so don't be afraid to speak out in public among yourself because people hear
You talking about Jesus.
Jesus.
Nice. Good. So your Samaritan woman could be anywhere or the well. And it's when Jesus is not at his best. He's tired. How many times have I used that? I'm just tired. I'm not going to do it tonight. He's at his worst, if you would, physically. But look what it is. The whole Samaritan village, a lot of the men all became believers. He stays 2 days. And these people couldn't stand each other just because of one woman who was in sin. Yes.
last week, just stopped in briefly, and I went grocery out. And I was just standing there looking at the dried fruit. This lady over there just the other side of me, she said, made some kind of a comment to me. And then she actually began, talking, kept talking, and talking about how the Lord led her with the Holy Spirit and all this stuff. And she was she asked her where she worshiped, and she said, I don't. And I said, she's been talking about the Holy Spirit. So I said, well, do you think possibly the Holy Spirit put us together tonight?
Good.
So we talked another 20 minutes, Melissa in the car with the dog.
Yeah.
Talked for at least 20 minutes. And I invited her to come. She did exactly what we did.
Nice.
And I said the times, and she said, oh, I know the times are right there on the sign.
Good. Maybe she will then.
Here today, she's not here.
Yeah. Let me piggyback that with what Doug said. Often when I'm sitting down with someone, and I'll tell them what you said, you both were saying. I don't believe in coincidences when it comes to our spirituality. I think God put us together because I've been praying for it, and you have a heart to seeking, and so I don't take anything for granted. This is serious, what's happened. God orchestrated this event. I say that because I believe that, because the fact that I'm talking to someone I don't know that was introduced into my life through one of you, God had to do that. I had nothing to do with it. And I just thank God even if he didn't, because he gets the glory for everything. Yes. So here's the last thing I want to leave you with. How many of us, when we first became Christians, were excited and we talked to everyone? We talked to our moms, our dads, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, and they all just scattered. So the parents and the family couldn't scatter, so they just shut up about that Jesus. Some of them did come to the Lord, though, right? But we were excited, right? The farther we get from that moment, and the moment for this lady was meeting Jesus at the well. That was an amazing moment, wasn't it? She was excited and passionate. But the more days and the distance and time that exists between myself and that moment, often this sadly is what happens. We become distracted, apathetic, cynical. No one's going to listen. There's no one left. And probably just disinterested because we're interested in other things like Mariana was talking about. That's why these things are left for us. So we can remember that moment in our life when we came to the Lord and the excitement we had, so we can stay close to Jesus, because when you're close to him in our encounter with him, we'll continue to be excited and passionate. But when we drift from Jesus, when we go through a lot of the actions, but we can still drift from Jesus, can't we? We become stale. So let's not do that. Let's remember, found people always find people. Yes.